bit of the flavour of Lima there, a third of the population of Peru lives in Lima. And the first thing that was to notice is how busy the whole place was, and the traffic was just horrendous. And if the bit of road in front of you was full of a car, then you just went off the road up the side to overtake it. It was quite exhilarating, but a bit scary. And then the next thing we saw were the houses built up the side. The centre of the city was the normal big city that you would experience, and then up the sides of the hills were the shanty towns. And we were very fortunate that Wes Stafford, as you saw, was with us. It was a privilege to see him and the way that he interacted with not only the staff in the churches, but the children, and the love that that worldwide mission of compassion had for the kids who were in dire poverty.
The first principle that impressed us was the fact that compassion only works through local churches. So the work is led by Christians on the ground who know the situation and the culture and have a personal commitment to the communities in which they're serving. And we visited several church centres. Everywhere we went, we had a very warm welcome. We were enthusiastically welcomed and had to dive through the Welcome Dear Friends hoop at this particular centre. Some Peruvian ladies dressed up for us. Some were right out on the hillside. But wherever we went, we got this kind of enthusiastic welcome of all the children and the workers that made us humbled you really to how warmly they welcomed you on that visit. And from each church centre, we then went out onto home visits, the homes of the children that were being helped by the programme. And for each one that we went to, we had a big washing up bowl full of goodies, primarily of food, to take to the family. And to get to these houses, we had sometimes very precarious routes that we had to walk on. Fortunately, I didn't have to carry one of the baskets very far, but they were very heavy indeed, and this footpath in particular was quite scary. And as we got over to the ridge, to that footpath, I suddenly felt very much at home, because there in front of me was the cement works of Lima. I knew what it was the moment I got there.
The work that Compassion does, as we've said, is run through the local churches. They have one paid person, and the rest are all volunteers. And they start working when women are expecting the baby. They start to work with that mother to prepare her for the birth of her child. Now this was, it's called the Child Survival Programme, and this was of particular interest to me, having worked with health visitors in the past and knowing how they work. It was really interesting to see that these volunteers were doing all that our paid health visitors do. They worked in centres. The children are brought into the church each week, where they have programmes of toys, a bit like Only Learning Centre toys, where they're encouraging their development and their growth. And they are given a box of toys to take back home, the same sort of toys as they have in the centre, so that the mother can then practice what she's been learning in the centre. In the centre, they do health checks, they're weighing them, they're measuring how high they are, they have doctors come in and do medical checks. It's just like a baby clinic, really. And then the person that works with the child in the centre goes to visit the child at home. And she goes every fortnight to maintain that relationship, to work on a one-to-one basis. And as you see, the homes are very basic. And that particular mother that we visited, you can see she's got 2 children. She wasn't part of the Compassion sponsorship with the first child, but she was with that new baby. And she said to us that the difference it had made being part of that, to get the encouragement, to teach her how to discipline appropriately the child, how to encourage the child's development, was just huge. And here you see what the worker from the church with the smaller child, there she was encouraging the child to walk round the bed. In that room, they lived in one room, and in the room there was just the bed and a table and a couple of chairs. So she said here was a good home because they had a bed that she could help the child to learn to walk round. Lots of the homes that she goes to don't have a bed, they just sleep on the floor. So there she was helping her to practice her walking, and also she went on to teach her about fine motor skills. She was getting her to pick up little things to get her fingers working. And that day it was index finger, and another day she was going to do the rest of the fingers. It was very encouraging, very interesting to see.
The main program that they do is the child sponsorship program, where children are identified for sponsorship, and then sponsors pay £21 a month towards that child's care. And the programs that they have cover different aspects of a child's life. The physical and the, can't read that, it's in Peruvian, but the physical, the economic, the spiritual and the social. Every aspect of a child's life is cared for through the child sponsorship program. And here's one of the classrooms that we visited when we were there. This one was for older children in one of the local churches, having a cookery class in one of the other churches that was for primary age children. Here's their classroom. And all the people that go to the centres are given a good nutritional meal at lunchtime. It's probably the best meal that they get is when they go to the centre. And here's the home of one of the boys that we visited, the mother there with the orange shirt on. When we arrived, she was in floods of tears. We were running very late. She'd been looking forward to us coming, and she thought we were so late that we weren't going to turn up, and she was really quite distraught, but so thrilled when we did arrive. This again is a one-room house, really crowded with several children. This is the boy that's being sponsored by the scheme, and this is their toilet, which is just literally a hole in the ground outside their main room. No wonder Mum looks so grim next to Jackie. Another lady that we visited, here was a lady who had severe disability, had a very bent back and couldn't walk very well, and yet she had 3 children that she was trying to care for, and she told us a pitiful story of the father of the child abusing the child, and just how difficult it was for her to get justice for him, and Compassion was seeing what they could do to help her. Here's another house we visited. That's the one room they've got at the back there, and the area where we're all standing is an area that they've dug out of the hill. They've levelled off these 2 guys to build a second room onto the house. And here's the family out the front.
As Compassion works with mothers-to-be, babies, school-age children, they also work with the brightest of the bright to send them to university. This is a very small program in comparison with what the rest of what they do, because of it costs so much more. As Martin said, to sponsor a child through this program is £21 a month. To sponsor a child or a young adult into university costs 10 times that. And so they take the brightest of the bright and they support them through university. And we met one of these young men. He had a meal with us, and he still lived in one of the houses that you've seen up the hillside, going to university every day. And he wanted to make a difference in his country. And in other parts of the world, not in Peru, but other parts of the world, some compassion children, sponsored children, are now in government in their countries. And this was the aim for the Peruvian centre there, that one day one of their kids, one of the kids they've helped through education, would end up in the national government to make a real difference to their nation.
So compassion is supporting all sorts of kids, not only in Peru but around the world. And here's just some of the children that we met when we were out there. All ages, but all living in those terrible conditions that you've seen on the hillside.
The kids do go to school. They go to the local school, but the compassion centres supplement the education. We were told that teachers, if they don't get their kids to very high marks in their exams, then they don't get paid. And so consequently, they give their kids very high marks, whatever the work that they submit. And so compassion is picking that up and really making sure that they do get to the standards that they should get to.
This is the boy that overlooks the cement works down that tricky path. And we were so taken by the work of compassion that when we got home, we started sponsoring a child. This is Gideon in Uganda, who we started sponsoring a little while ago. And we know of at least one other member of St. Matthew's and St. Oswald's and M2O, get it right, who is also involved in sponsoring a compassion child. And I think there are others involved in sponsorship with other programs as well. We were really impressed with compassion through the way that they work, through the fact that their whole program was holistic, that they were dealing with not only their spiritual aspect, but their economic situation and their social and emotional and physical development. This is just so important to care for the whole child. And it was a unique program that was centered on Christ, and it was focused on the child, but working from a church. I felt that was so valuable and so important. We hope that maybe some of you will want to support compassion. There's several ways that you can do that. You can be involved in individual sponsorship, as we are with Gideon at £21 a month. But if you can't afford that, you can be involved in group sponsorship, like a youth group or a small group could be sponsoring a child. And if enough of us think this is worthwhile, we could actually develop a church partnership with compassion, where the church focuses on a particular village or community in a particular part of the world. If you're interested in learning more about any of this, then please speak to Jackie or myself at the end of the service. And we do have these brochures which explain a bit more about what's involved in child sponsorship, but we'd also love to talk to you about the other programs that you can get involved in and how we can work together to make a difference. But the main thing that all of us can do when we're confronted with a situation like this is to pray and to keep praying. And so Jackie's going to lead us now in prayer.